Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. For the first time in 2022, we got to see Novak Djokovic on a hard court face top competition. What did it look like? It looked like two Djokovic wins, one of them sort of complicated with the Medvedev retirement, but that is going to be the focus of the show, breaking down what we saw against Medvedev before the injury and the final against Tsitsipas. But you did have Fritz and Tiafoe, a couple of Americans who have had great years in a final of a 500 in Tokyo. Taylor Fritz winning in 2 tiebreaks. I'll have some words on that towards the end of the show. I normally focus on the final. I thought this was one of those weeks. The semifinal was a lot more interesting. Djokovic versus Medvedev. I'll say I feel much better. And this was my biggest takeaway. Despite feeling, besides for feeling robbed, because it would have been great to see a third set. Medvedev retiring after the second set tiebreak. And I'll talk about that. Besides for feeling robbed, I feel much better about Daniil Medvedev's 2023 after seeing that match. Best he's played since Australia, to my eyes. It was really good stuff from Daniil, and he very, very nearly won it. Made some great matchup-specific adjustments as well. And this Djokovic-Medvedev rivalry, because I've been so locked in for every single match, because they've played so many big matches, it's been so incredible to see the evolution of the tactics and the kind of call response nature that this rivalry has taken on. And Novak won the last one in Paris. It was really interesting to see some new wrinkles to Daniil Medvedev's game plan in this one, which I'll break down. But first, let's talk about the retirement. So, second set tiebreak, Medvedev won the first set, and Daniil said after the match that he hurt himself at one love. I didn't visibly see anything on that point, but before the point at 3-1, Medvedev looked to his coaching box and kind of, I think, told them that he was in big trouble, that he was hurt. And then this point at 3-1 was pretty obvious. With Medvedev's movement, he comes out to a forehand and hits it on the run here, and you could see after he hit this forehand, there was no recovery to the middle. You can just see on this screenshot if you're watching on YouTube how unathletic he looks at this very moment, just not really getting out of that corner, and then very, very slow to cover this forehand down the line by Djokovic. He does get there. And then later in the point, Novak hits a drop shot, and Medvedev does not go for it. And if you were watching the match, you know that Medvedev was running down, at least attempting to run down almost every Novak drop shot on the backhand side, which was a lot of them. So he looked completely off on this 3-1 point. And then for the rest of the tiebreak, he did everything he could to avoid moving. He hit like 3-4 backhand drop shots. Pretty much every time he had a chance to step into a backhand, he had a drop shot. Hit some big forehands as well. He has the first serve to try to finish points quickly with. He made a couple of runs where he looked, like he was making that final push or maybe looking okay. But for the most part, there were clear and obvious signs that Daniil Medvedev had hurt himself. Now, if you were, focused on the ball more so than Medvedev, if you weren't watching as carefully and you didn't notice that really kind of 180 that Medvedev did tactically, then I completely understand being caught off guard by the retirement and feeling, again, surprised and I guess dubious. But here's the thing. Even if Medvedev hadn't been showing obvious signs that he had hurt himself, here is a competitive player. There's no history of Daniil Medvedev being uncompetitive on the tennis court. The man puts a lot of effort in and cares deeply about winning tennis matches. There are a couple players that you can't say that about. And if those players were in the same situation, then maybe you could cast some doubt on a retirement like this. But here's a competitive player who had been really close to winning the match a few moments ago and was about to start a third set. So the score was tied, 1 set apiece. How could you doubt that? How could you doubt in that situation that Daniil Medvedev couldn't play anymore? How could you doubt that he felt something in his abductor, which is what he said after the match, or his hamstring, whatever it was, I'm a little bit unclear, that was scary and was definitive, that he couldn't play, that he felt something pull, that he felt something twinge. I mean, I thought the fact that Daniil took any heat about this retirement was absolutely wrong. A competitive player retired with the match still in question, that should tell you all you need to know. And the signs were there before then. So get out of here with the, Medvedev kind of tapped out, that he pulled the plug too early, that he should have called for the trainer. I know that most players kind of do that for, optics sometimes maybe. But look, Daniil knew he couldn't go anymore. So I think it was absolutely wrong that he took heat for it. Djokovic's reaction was interesting, though. Novak looked upset. Novak looked like he wanted to keep playing. And this just shows how little the result meant to Djokovic. Hear me out. I know that sounds a little weird. What this showed to me is what Djokovic cared about was not advancing to the final, but what Djokovic cared about was outplaying and beating Daniil Medvedev. That's what he wanted. That's the competitor that Novak Djokovic is. He didn't want to just be the victor. He wanted to win. And he was upset because he felt that he hadn't actually destroyed or defeated Daniil Medvedev, which he in fairness, he hadn't. Novak thought that he kind of got outplayed in both sets, found a way to win the second. And I think he wanted a chance in the third set, an opportunity to start to outplay Daniil Medvedev. So he was upset, which just shows what a competitor Novak is, because he didn't care about, getting to the final. He wanted to win. He wanted to defeat Daniil Medvedev. It was interesting. All right, let's talk about the match tactically. First thing I want to address here, this was their first meeting since the Paris Masters last year. And that match, if you will recall, is the match where Djokovic serve volleyed on every point on the deuce side, slice serve out wide, came in behind it. Super, super effective in that match. Basically took over. Huge reason he won it. Novak won it. So let's just continue that thread, right? Djokovic serve and volley, not nearly as much in this match. He used it as a changeup, and he used it when Medvedev drifted back on the deuce side. But for the most part, Daniil was standing further up to try to deter it. When Novak used it, it was still highly effective, but I think maybe he lost 1 point on it. I thought he won maybe 5 to 8 points on it. And I'll say 4 to 8 points on it. So I still think it was highly effective, but Medvedev deterred. Medvedev used his return position to kind of detract from that tactic. So good job by Daniil, but it wasn't as big a factor in this match. So we can kind of toss that aside. I do think that it's still something that Djokovic feels like he can go to on a big point against Medvedev on the deuce side. Still something that I think he will go to on a big point, but he didn't come into this match. He clearly, he knew that Daniil would have that in his mind. He didn't have the element of surprise. He probably has seen that Medvedev at the U.S. Open has kind of moved up his return position to try to take away from the serve and volley. So Djokovic just came into the match. I think he didn't really he didn't feel like that was the best way to go. So he used it sometimes, but he did use it effectively. So it is still a factor. What this was, though, was certainly a continuation of Djokovic's proactive shot selection against Medvedev. Constant breaking of rally patterns, breaking neutrality, changing things up. I think Djokovic would rather miss than grind. He does not think that grinding against Medvedev, that playing physical rallies against Medvedev is a good path to victory. So what you'll actually see from Novak in this matchup, and this has been true ever since the 2021 Australian Open final. Novak is doing very little cross-court trading. Because if he's going to hit, if he's going to do a lot of cross-court trading, Daniil is going to do that right back, and it's going to get very, very physical. Novak knows he cannot rely on Medvedev to miss. There's not going to be errors. So Djokovic doesn't want to play that game, and he wants to make a lot happen. And this comes at the cost of consistency. It's not. I think what we need to get kind of out of our heads, it's not that it's a good tactic for Djokovic. It's not that it's a bad tactic for Djokovic. It is just a tactic. And there are good parts about it and there are bad parts about it. And it's just about how a given match plays out. In the first set, I think it's hardest to do it in the first set because Medvedev is fresh and he's able to do a lot of scrambling. He has a lot of quickness. And with Djokovic just seeking finishes very proactively, it's harder to do that when Medvedev is fully fresh at the beginning of a match. So maybe that is why in the first set, Medvedev was able to win the set without doing anything special offensively. Djokovic got his serve broken twice. The first time he made, 3 mistakes on the front court, 2 volleys and an approach shot. And in the second game, Djokovic just forced a couple of drop shots and missed a couple of attacking ground strokes. He's trying to force it. He's looking for finishes. He does not want this to get physical. And then Medvedev, when he had an advantage in the first set, when he went up that break at 4-3 and then at 5-4, his serve really took over in his final 2 service games of the first set. And I just haven't seen that as often this year. So it was nice to see. And all in all, Medvedev's serve looked back. It looked like it was back to what we know it can be, which is one of the best serves in the game. Another huge adjustment that Daniil made in response to what Djokovic was doing. So Novak didn't want it to get physical. Medvedev decided, okay, if you want to play really aggressively, if you don't want to rally, then you're going to have to hit backhands. Because from the back of the court, when Djokovic is looking to do a lot of damage, he can drive through his forehand and hurt Medvedev quite easily. He can't do that on his backhand. Daniil knows that Novak's backhand isn't big enough, and by the way, almost nobody's backhand is big enough to finish from behind the baseline when Medvedev's in decent defensive position. It's just not big enough. So Medvedev really peppered Djokovic's backhand. And he's going to go cross-court. Medvedev's going to hit his backhand cross-court, 70% of the time. And that's kind of normal, just trading cross-court with the backhand. What was pretty abnormal and something you should definitely watch out for when these guys play in the future is Medvedev's not hitting his forehand cross-court. He's going down the line with his forehand because he does not want to give Djokovic an opportunity to be aggressive on his forehand. He wants to make him create with his backhand. Create offense with your backhand. Not going to let you do it off your forehand. And in order for Djokovic to create with his backhand, he kind of needs to hit drop shots. He needs to push Medvedev back with depth and weight of shot. And then once he pushes Medvedev back, now he can get the short ball. He can hit the drop shot. But that's kind of what needs to be done. It's a lot less straightforward. I think on the forehand, Djokovic, with the power he can generate off of his forehand, he doesn't need to rely on those kind of intricate combinations of power and finesse. He can kind of just lean on the power. It's a little bit easier. So I think that was really smart by Medvedev in terms of his baseline patterns, just taking his forehand down the line, not going cross court, forcing Djokovic to finish with his backhand. But ultimately, we didn't really get to see how things would have played out had Medvedev not been injured. Djokovic in the second set, I mean, he was excellent, and Medvedev was excellent as well. The quality was super high, and then in the tiebreak, Medvedev had to completely change his tactic from being super patient, never missing, backhands cross court every time, just very safe but very deep and unattackable. He started really trying to force the issue because he was injured. So unfortunate. But ultimately, I think Medvedev made a lot of good adjustments and served the best he has in a while, moved incredibly well, best he's moved in a while. It looked like the Medvedev of old. So you feel much better about Daniil. Even if he's going to be injured, maybe he's out for the rest of the year. I don't know. And one thing is for sure, after a result like this, it's just not Medvedev's year, huh? I mean, it's just not his year. Everything is going wrong for him. But in terms of the level that he played, really, really positive. And Djokovic was right there. Who knows what would have happened in the third set. The one thing Novak did really well, and I'm going to end it on this and then turn the page to the final. The one thing Novak did really well was force Medvedev to move a ton. I mean, really pressure Daniil's movement. I mean, there was a lot of physical stress that Daniil was put under in this match. I can't credit, Novak for Daniil sustaining an acute injury in this match. I can't. I know some are going to do that. I really can't go there because that's just Daniil's style. And we've discussed that. We've covered that on this channel. Daniil's going to run a ton. That's just going to be his game. Especially on the return game, because the offensive weapon is the first serve. But other than that, he's going to be having to scramble a ton. But I do think that Djokovic, with the execution on his drop shot, which is exceptional, pairing that with the lob, forcing Medvedev to hit difficult volleys. Daniil not being awesome in the front court. He's not great. He was all right in this match, but he's not great. That is a situation that Djokovic, I think he feels pretty good about himself. And I think that the way Djokovic is dictating terms, I think that he's confident over the course of a match, it begins to favor him more and more and more because Medvedev will have broken down. Let's go on to this final. Djokovic-Tsitsipas. Now, this match, unlike the Medvedev match, which felt really, close, and it was an awesome level, this match didn't feel close at all. So let me just say, one thing I really admire about Novak from these two matches, in fact, in awe of Djokovic in this respect, the ability to understand your opponent and play a certain way accordingly and keep that tactical focus and that presence of mind throughout is absolutely incredible. Tennis players, they have, comfortable play styles. They have a lot of habits on court, and it's hard to break those habits. And especially when there's pressure, you start to do what's most comfortable. But here we see Djokovic play two matches back-to-back against top players in Medvedev and Tsitsipas and play a completely different way in both matches. And, he didn't just start the match differently. Every point in and point out, he had a consistent approach against these two players, but it was a different approach. Against Medvedev, he doesn't feel like he has an advantage in consistency or shot tolerance. He doesn't want it to be physical. He doesn't want it to grind. Against Tsitsipas, none of that is true. None of that is true. He feels like he's the more consistent player. He wants to drag out rallies because I feel like there are two factors here. He is the steadier player, Novak is. He has better focus. He has better shot tolerance. And the more they play in neutral, the more backhands Tsitsipas needs to hit. And Djokovic knows that if he makes Stefanos hit backhands, he is going to get errors and he's going to get balls to attack. And I mean, look, that's the complete opposite. Against Medvedev, you're going to get nothing to attack because his depth is just absurd. Every backhand that Medvedev hits is deep, and it never misses. So we're not going to make any progress, right? You have to try to be aggressive, make Medvedev defend, make him come forward in uncomfortable positions, mix in the slice, change directions constantly, force him back, hit, use angles to open up the court. You have to do all these things. Against Tsitsipas, no, you don't. Just because if you're trading backhands with him, you're in good shape. Djokovic is. Not everyone. Djokovic is in good shape. So, Tsitsipas, he has trouble kind of protecting his backhand, and then he feels like he needs to do a ton on his forehand, and he's inconsistent on his forehand because he's trying to do too much. Because he's very desperate when he has forehands. At least this is the sense I get. He's very desperate to take full control of the point and to not have to hit a backhand, right? Ever, for the remainder of the point. And that's kind of a problem because you're facing a guy in Djokovic who is elite defensively. And if you are anxious to finish against that guy, you're probably going to miss because it's not going to happen. It's going to take patience. It's going to take a lot of variety and skill, and it might take 3 or 4 shots in combination to finish against Novak Djokovic. And it just feels like Tsitsipas is trying to hit through him with his forehand and missing as a result, overpressing as a result. And we know that on the backhand there are issues. So Djokovic was machine-like. He never missed in this match. He lost just 6 points on serve. The return is still an issue for Tsitsipas. One improvement from Tel Aviv. I talked about how Djokovic got pretty tense against both Safiullin and Cilic. There wasn't even a hint of tension in Djokovic's game at any point, so you could see he's getting more match tough. And Djokovic played way cleaner. So unforced errors, Tsitsipas made 25, Djokovic made 7. Novak lost just 6 points on serve in this match, which kind of goes back to me feeling like it wasn't a close match because Novak was never under pressure on his serve. I do want to kind of show you an example of Tsitsipas not really being able to hang backhand to backhand. Here's a really important point, and we saw a lot of this. Here's a really important point. It's deuce. It's 5-4. Djokovic is serving it out. Tsitsipas got a little bit lucky on the previous point. He got a net cord return winner. But here is a backhand trade by Djokovic, cross court. Good pace on this ball. Pulls Tsitsipas outside the singles sideline. When you're outside the singles sideline, you're not really going to be able to recover to the middle. So you have to try to hit an unattackable trade here. The key on any unattackable trade is going to be the depth. I highlighted the kind of area in the court where Tsitsipas would have been safe here. Tsitsipas hits this backhand in the highlighted region of the court, which if you're listening on a podcast is, 2 to 3 feet beyond the service line. Djokovic probably just needs to trade this back cross court, or if he goes down the line, he is not going to be able to measure it or hit it as hard. But this backhand cross court is too short and too attackable. So Novak leans into it, changes down the line, and he pinpoints this literally on both lines, the sideline and the baseline, for a clean winner. We saw a lot of this, but that's an example. Tsitsipas just can't hang backhand to backhand at all. But the biggest thing that stood out to me in this final was Tsitsipas still being held back in the mental game. Thought Djokovic was an absolute killer in this match. The focus was so sharp, and emotionally he was very positive, and again, like a killer. Fought like an animal for every point. Unbelievably present. Never went away. Never had a lapse. Just an A-plus mental performance from Djokovic in this final. For Tsitsipas, it was more of the same. I feel like a part of me, and this has happened to players in the past, a part of me, I feel like I'm being too negative because he's had some good wins. He's had some big wins. He beat Rublev in the semifinal. That was a good win. He competed hard. He competed well. But the last two times I've covered Tsitsipas at length, it was the Cincinnati final against Borna Coric, where I had the same kind of critique. And now I'm going to have, once again, in this final in Astana, the same critique, which is Tsitsipas not handling adversity well. The word is resilience. The word is resilience that I'm not seeing for Tsitsipas. When bad stuff happens, how do you respond? I'm not seeing Tsitsipas respond well to bad stuff happening. And the example are the two times his serve was broken in this match. That was the match. One break of serve in the first set, one break of serve in the second set. That was it. By the way, Tsitsipas indoors with his first serve, his forehand, his transition game. I really like his serve plus one game. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was on point, and that was all good. Did I like the way he was playing in rallies? No. I think he's got to be more patient. I think he's got to be willing to grind more. And he's got to ultimately be more consistent on his forehand, and he has to protect his backhand better. But he was able to hold serve often because he served pretty well. His attacking forehand is still lethal. His serve plus one game is still lethal. So he was able to hold serve for the most part. But here were the two times that he did not hold serve. First time, they play a really, really long rally. Really long rally. This was in the first set. First point of the match. And surely Novak's legs start to feel tired. Tsitsipas's legs start to feel tired. It's one of those points where you're hurting physically, and and the cardio is starting to go. And Tsitsipas played a good point and just couldn't find a way through. Djokovic goes to the drop shot here, and Tsitsipas does not run it down. That was tapping out. That was throwing in the towel to me. It was a drop shot that Tsitsipas probably should have at least run down. And I think Tsitsipas felt pretty demoralized, like, I just played this great point. I played 25 balls or more. I don't know exactly how long it was. And this guy was just such a wall, such a machine. I couldn't get anything done here, and then he's going to hit that drop shot. And it was just a very demoralizing first point. And that is an argument against the analytics, by the way. There's, a big movement in tennis for prioritizing the 0 through 4 shot rallies, right? Which I certainly think that there's a ton of truth to it. The majority of points in a tennis match are short points, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. But when you lose a 30-shot rally, that doesn't feel the same mentally, emotionally as losing a 3-shot rally. It feels completely different. And longest rally of the match, Djokovic hits a drop shot. Tsitsipas doesn't even go for it, and he should have. He should have reacted. It was not a great drop shot. It was all right. It was an average, decent drop shot. And at the end of the day, Tsitsipas just felt too tired. So watching the match, I thought, okay, this is interesting. How is Stefanos going to respond to playing a really good first point and still losing it? That was a really tough blow, a tough way to lose the first point. How's he going to respond? He makes 3 forehand unforced errors to get his serve broken. 3 bad forehands. Doesn't respond well. And the same thing happens in the second set. This is the first point in the 2-all game. Djokovic is way stretched out here after a great cross-court forehand by Tsitsipas. Now Tsitsipas has a great forehand to attack. He's inside the baseline. He's going to lean into this one. And Djokovic with great anticipation here. You see Novak running to the deuce side, split stepping on the deuce side, anticipating the inside-in forehand. And that's where Tsitsipas goes. Look, if Steph went inside out, he would have won the point. But he goes inside in. And Djokovic is able to defend it and play an extra ball. Here's it again. Djokovic is in the deuce corner, and Tsitsipas wants to go behind him, but look what happens. Novak stays again. So same situation. Attackable forehand by Tsitsipas. If he goes down the line, he wins the point. He goes cross. He goes cross. And he actually just misses this one in the net. But what happens oftentimes is you see in the corner of your eye that your opponent is waiting for you where you're about to hit the ball, and that can force you to miss, which is why I think Tsitsipas missed this forehand. Frustrating. Really frustrating. Tough way to lose the first point of that service game. What does he do? He looks to his box. He looks to his box, and he goes 10 seconds. 10 seconds just yelling about losing that first point. All right, how are you going to respond to a really sucky way to lose the first point of your service game, where you hit 2 great forehands and Novak defended both of them, and then you had a third one to attack and you missed it, and you kept hitting it exactly where Novak was anticipating. Shank forehand error on the next point. Serve and volley, which was a great return by Djokovic, but serve and volley, it's really tough to serve and volley against Novak. Probably just not a smart play. But, I'll give Tsitsipas a pass for that one. And then first ball, backhand, drop shot, unforced error. Return was short by Novak. Not a good unforced error. Return was short. You have a ball to attack. Missed the drop shot. Probably should have just ripped the backhand. If you're going to drop shot, don't miss. So the thing is with Tsitsipas in these games is you felt the break coming on both these occasions. As I'm watching the match, I felt both times coming because I thought, ooh, that's a tough first point. You have to be resilient. You have to turn the page. And instead of turning the page, Tsitsipas made forehand unforced errors. Because, in my opinion, the disappointment and frustration of what happened on those opening points lingered. And that's what I've been seeing at Tsitsipas recently in these big matches. Lingering effects. Fritz Tiafoe, just a couple of words. It's kind of funny. Tiafoe won 13 tiebreaks in a row, and then he loses the final 6-7, 6-7. It's kind of funny. But Fritz, he's now 8th in the world. He's 7th in the race. And let's not forget, he's had 2 significant injuries. Both of them, his foot. He missed Madrid and Rome, came back, wasn't really ready to play Roland Garros. Then after Wimbledon, he was in a walking boot for like 3 weeks. Wasn't really ready to compete well in DC or Canada. But that was a well-timed injury. So it was really the fact that he's missed those 2 clay court masters. Yes, he's not so comfortable on clay. So how well would he have really done? That is up for debate. Then you look at his Wimbledon run. It's pretty much him and Sinner and Novak. Those are the 3 guys that were hurt by Wimbledon not having points. So all of these things have gone against Fritz, yet he's still now 7th in the race, 8th in the world. It is a reflection of how well he's played all year. I do feel like I was on this from the start in January in Australia. I said, look, Fritz, that's a top 10 level out of Fritz. He's playing like a top 10er. I think that's been true all year long. So his ranking now just reflects that. Tiafoe in this final, he wasn't really getting in. That's the one thing that I kind of took away from it. Tiafoe wasn't really able to get in, and that is what he needs to do. That's what he's been doing. So it was weird to see him so passive positionally. You also got to credit, though, the depth and the weight of shot that Fritz brings to the table, especially on the backhand side. His depth is incredible. It is difficult to find opportunities to come forward when someone is operating with such great length off the ground. I'm impressed overall with Tiafoe, generally speaking with him, that he hasn't had a letdown. I thought that was a major possibility. Really pleasantly, I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, because I wasn't like saying he was going to have a letdown, but I certainly wouldn't have been surprised. So let's just say that I am impressed that he hasn't had a letdown after all of the fanfare and the emotion that came with the U.S. Open run and even Laver Cup. Thrust into the spotlight in some of the biggest matches of his career in terms of the attention and the gravitas, from the doubles match to winning it for Team World. I'm impressed that there was no letdown here. So between Fritz and Tiafoe, there's a real question now for who's going to finish 2023 as the top-ranked American. Isn't that a good question at this point? It was pretty clear coming into this year that Fritz was in the best position, that he was the alpha, as Isner has fallen off. Opelka, I know, he's had such a quiet season that, it's almost difficult to remember this, but Opelka was honestly probably the other guy here that you may have came into 2022 considering that maybe he was about to make a leap and he was going to be the top ranked American. He was just outside the top 20, if my memory serves, when the season started, right around where Fritz was. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's been up and down, mentally in terms of his consistency, which is why I wasn't all that confident in him, but the ability is there. He had hip surgery, by the way, for anyone who's wondering what has happened with Opelka. That's why he's out. I'm not sure when he's coming back. Sometime next year. Hopefully he'll be ready to go for January. I'm not sure, though. At this point, it's really Tiafoe. With him shoring up the forehand, improving his match management, his focus, improving his fitness and his professionalism off court in terms of his recovery, in terms of his diet and all the things he does, keeping himself in the best shape possible. All of these small improvements that he's made that have added up to what we've seen in the latter half of this year. Now it's probably between Fritz and Frances, and I still have the same feeling on this. I think that Fritz is pretty close to his ceiling. I don't see that much that Fritz can do better. Maybe he gets a good front court game. That would be incredible. I'm just not quite holding my breath. That's clearly the thing in Fritz's game that can take him to the next level, is if he gets comfortable in the front court. It will take him to the next level. It's that, and it's just the nerve management. I mean, look, you think about all of the matches all of the big wins that he's left on the table over the last couple years. Djokovic with the torn ab, Nadal with the torn ab. Novak was a Australian Open match. Nadal, Wimbledon this year. And then what's the most recent one? I feel like there was another one more recently. It just feels like there have been some 50-50 matches where Fritz has let his nerves get the better of him. So I think that in the front court game, but other than that, Fritz is looking so polished. He's starting to move really, really well. He now goes after his forehand, which I've covered. I mean, the forehand is phenomenal. The backhand is phenomenal. He is such a good power baseliner, such a balanced power baseliner. What Tiafoe has going for him is he's a better athlete and he has more shots. He has a bigger toolbox. He is a fantastic volleyer. He has great feel, great touch. he'll mix it up. He has a ton of variety. The fact that is it going to be Frances or Fritz, which I think is where that conversation is at, Tiafoe should feel really, really good about that. All right. Moving on to next week. Nothing actually, I don't know. It's the week before Paris. It's kind of it feels like a week where the WTA is going to actually be a bigger deal than the ATP. San Diego is absolutely stacked. But we'll see what we got. I'm planning on doing a mailbag on Friday. So hopefully I will talk to you guys then. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.